Hello, and welcome to my presentation, The Crown Jewel. Sorry, I lasted 5 seconds. But the introduction and this plastic monstrosity on top of my head are both relevant, as today I will be discussing Netflix's Young Royals within the global media sphere surrounding representation and subverting tradition. Let's dive into Young Royals, a Swedish Netflix gem that's delivering top-tier drama across its 18 episodes. The show is equal parts incredible and devastating, just to warn you. In addition to a royal romance, it's shaking up how global media represents LGBTQ plus identities and also gives us a fresh look at the world of aristocracy. Young Royals is part of Netflix's big global strategy, reaching over 190 countries. Entirely produced in Sweden, it sidesteps the usual Western tropes and gives us something unique. For example, we follow Prince Wilhelm as he balances his royal obligations with his journey to figuring out his sexuality after being entwined with a male classmate. Whilst not an incredibly relatable situation, there is something for everybody with this show, with the story highlighting LGBTQ plus representation. That's where the show shines. It's proof that Netflix's global reach can give the little guy a big voice. Young Royals doesn't stick with the cliches, but gives us complex characters and stories that mean a lot to viewers who don't often see themselves represented this way, as something more than their situation, something beyond who they love. Alright, now time for a little theory, but don't worry, I'll be quick. According to Lotz, Eklund, and Soroka in the Journal of Communication, Netflix's strategy of localizing and globalizing content has created a new media flow. Although Young Royals is distinctively Swedish, it resonates with people everywhere because the themes such as finding yourself and understanding identity are universal. Monahan also adds that while platforms like Netflix are pushing for inclusivity, they are also walking a commercial tightrope. This can limit how far a show can actually go with challenging themes and breaking boundaries. But Young Royals definitely pushes the envelope on what is typically seen in teen dramas, or even royal dramas for that matter. Monahan also reminds us that streaming platforms are still in fact businesses. Netflix may be batting 1,000 for representation, but it's not going to completely abandon its commercial interest anytime soon. This means that there are limits to how radical these stories can be, but we'll take what we can get. So, Scandinavian media, according to Linz, is great at breaking away from the cookie-cutter coming-out storyline that we see so often. Rather, in Young Royals, Wilhelm's journey is open-ended. He's not just coming out in one big moment, and every problem is then magically solved. Like in reality, it's an ongoing, layered, and confusing experience for Wilhelm. In fact, he does not once explicitly label his sexuality in the series, which in of itself breaks the stereotype of incessant labeling. Now, when he does fall for Simon, a character with a completely different background to himself, we get something else we rarely see in mainstream media: a queer relationship with class and cultural layers that feels authentic and unforced. Now, this shows LGBTQ plus youth that love can be real, complex, and genuine, even if one of you is an heir to the throne, for example, or any other much more likely extenuating circumstance. We also have the classic public versus private self conflict within the show. Prince Wilhelm is expected to put the royal family's image above everything else, even his own happiness. This quickly falls apart. Now, this reflects a big theme in Scandinavian media, where stories often challenge societal norms. By contrasting Wilhelm's royal life with Simon's more grounded, lower-class background and issues, Young Royal shows how the pressure of class and privilege can affect one's personal freedom. This is huge in today's media landscape, where questioning privilege and old systems is becoming the new normal. This aspect is solidified by the song Revolution, that is used at pivotal points throughout the series, echoing that change can be a beautiful thing that we should embrace. Now let's discuss Young Royals in the context of queer youth representation more specifically, and how it navigates the theme of pleasure versus panic. According to Gitson's article, Pleasure's Ascendancy Against Queer Youth Panic, the TV shows in the US and Europe specifically, including Young Royals, are challenging outdated norms of queer relationships, which are commonly tied to shame and fear. The way Young Royals frames the intimacy between Wilhelm and Simon highlights a much-needed shift in media narratives, portraying queer love as something ordinary and even joyful, contrasting previous depictions that often rely on tragedy and secrecy. Gitson also notes that this destigmatizes queer identities and also encourages global audiences to move beyond stereotypes and instead focus on authentic portrayals. This insight is significant in understanding Young Royals as a cultural milestone for Netflix. As making queer youth love stories accessible and genuine, Young Royals is a part of the evolving media landscape that prioritizes representation instead of sensationalism. To close, Young Royals is much more than a TV show. It's a statement, bringing LGBTQ+ identities to the forefront whilst also challenging what we think about power and privilege. Streaming platforms like Netflix may be on the right path, but there is always more to be done. Supporting authentic narratives that challenge stereotypes and hierarchies should be a priority for everyone in the future. And by supporting stories like Young Royals, we can change what representation looks like. We can showcase it as something complex, relatable, and groundbreaking, like it deserves to be shown. Now for some performative symbolism. Thanks for watching. Now go and watch Young Royals.